Hello everyone and welcome to episode 41 of my Human Mage playthrough. Today I have a lot of things planned, and starting off at the start of this episode, I actually want to work on something for tailoring that is going to take us back to the Arathi Highlands, because a couple of episodes ago I learned a new tailoring recipe for this robe of power, which is a very nice robe that we can go ahead and take a look at right here that I want to make. But in order to make it, we need to get some elemental earth, water, fire, and air. So I thought that we could go ahead and go to the Arathi Highlands because there are a ton of elementals there. And then at the start of this episode, we're just going to kill a bunch of elementals to collect some of these items. And I just want to talk about World of Warcraft for a little bit. So let's go ahead and take a griffin to Refuge Point. So arriving in the Arathi Highlands, we can go ahead and head around the map because there are 4 different areas where there are 4 different types of elementals that will drop the items that we need. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to farm them a bunch, and then if it starts taking too much time, I might go ahead and go to the auction house and buy some, because we have 59 gold, almost 60 gold right now. So we have a little bit of money that we can throw away towards that. We do have to be careful though, because we are almost level 40 and we want like 92 gold or something like that in order to get our mount. But fortunately for us, I have some gold on another character that I've been playing on the server, so I don't think we're going to like spend a lot of time on camera just farming like a ton of gold for that, because that's a little bit boring. But what we are going to start farming for is at this location right over here, just east of Thoradin's wall right here that we can see off in the distance. I just really like this wall. I've mentioned it like multiple times now, but I just really like how it looks, and it's super cool. And it is definitely resembling like a fallen kingdom that was once great. But we are here at the Circle of West Binding, so we can go ahead and start fighting some of these burning exiles here, which is actually part of another quest in this map that we could participate in if we wanted to, but I'm not thinking I'm going to. And this is also part of a very special warrior quest chain that we are not going to be participating in because we are not warriors, but we are here to just farm some of them, and we will go ahead and start trying to get all the items we need for the robe of power. But as we farm all these elementals here, I kind of want to talk a little bit about my experience playing World of Warcraft in the modern day. And for anyone who is watching this at any point, what is currently going on with World of Warcraft right now as I am recording this is that we are in the middle of Arathi Lich King Classic, and it is the old yard patch, and it's been out for like 3 months now I think, which is a very long time, and I think we're going to be getting a new patch pretty soon. And I have been really enjoying playing through Arathi Lich King Classic, and I've had a ton of fun with it, and I've had some very good experiences playing the game. But I think I'm like starting to realize that when we were going into Arathi Lich King Classic and like throughout my entire experience with World of Warcraft, I thought Arathi Lich King was my absolute favorite era of World of Warcraft. And there was a lot of discussion with like the original release of Classic WoW about the concept of like nostalgia and rose tinted glasses. And as Classic came out, for me, I did not feel very nostalgic at all. Like, it was the same world that I played, but of course it came out like before I started playing World of Warcraft, and alongside that I felt like a very like strong personal interest in playing the game beyond like nostalgia. And I think that was proven true as I started playing the game, because I thoroughly enjoyed playing through Classic WoW. And the biggest issue for me with Classic WoW at the time was the community. But I feel like the community, it's still not like my favorite thing, but in the Classic era now, it's significantly better for me for what I'm interested in and for what I enjoy and like. So I've been enjoying that aspect of Classic WoW a little bit more, but overall the gameplay and everything surrounding like the vanilla version of the game is thoroughly fun to me, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And then looking at the Burning Crusade Classic, and specifically Arathi Lich King Classic, I also enjoy it, but I feel like that era of World of Warcraft is definitely more nostalgia based and more rose tinted glasses for me. Where I think with Arathi Lich King, I'm more in line with like the idea now that I played it a lot back in the day, and I feel very satisfied and I feel like I completed the game. Where when I'm playing on characters in Arathi Lich King Classic, I don't really have a sense of like enjoyment playing through the game. I have a sense of nostalgia, and like it's fun to play through like all these quests and stuff, and I'm not having as much fun with the game as I am with like the classic version of World of Warcraft. And like I really enjoy like the world, and honestly the gameplay too, and the story and like the PvP and stuff of Wrath of the Lich King Classic, but there are a lot of like significant issues with like each of those things that I just said. But comparing it to the classic era version of World of Warcraft, I feel like for me, for what I enjoy, for what I like to play in the game, I'm enjoying the vanilla version of the game much more after having played through the original launch of Classic, through the classic era of Classic now, and through the Burning Crusade, and through the Wrath of the Lich King. And I think this kind of goes back to our discussion like 10-15 episodes ago for anyone who happened to watch that episode, where I was talking about like questing in like Wrath of the Lich King versus questing in Classic, where I have set my mind on I enjoy questing in Wrath of the Lich King, but I prefer questing in vanilla WoW. So I am still planning on playing through Wrath of the Lich King as I'm making this Let's Play series and I'm experiencing like the re-release of it again. But I think after this cycle of Wrath of the Lich King, I'm not entirely sure where I kind of fall in line with like World of Warcraft anymore, because we have the original releases of the base vanilla game and then the first two expansions, and I think a lot of people are kind of just done with Classic after that, where they're going to be enjoying like the classic era of vanilla WoW that exists, and then some people are going to quit the game altogether after Wrath of the Lich King is done and then move on to like other games. And then there are thoughts and like kind of predictions that they're going to re-release Cataclysm, which some people are probably going to be playing. Where when it comes down to what I want to do with like a Cataclysm re-release is that I'll probably play just a tiny bit as like it first comes out, as I'm just like finishing up playing the Wrath of the Lich King Classic, and I'm probably still playing the vanilla era, but I don't see myself really playing that at all. So I would probably definitely stop playing that after like the initial release. Like I would probably level a character through like the original like 1 through 60 experience in Cataclysm and probably play through some of the storylines there. Like Stone Talon Mountains and Eastern Plaguelands are two storylines in the Cataclysm that I enjoy a lot. But beyond that, I'm probably not going to do in-game stuff in Cataclysm, because I already did all of that back in the day, and I feel like with how I feel with Wrath of the Lich King, it's just not going to be a very enjoyable experience for me. And then I remember as well that I just did not enjoy Cataclysm as much as Wrath of the Lich King. But what I'm hoping with the end of Wrath of the Lich King is that we are going to get permanent Wrath of the Lich King servers, even if it's like one for PvP and one for PvE, so people can continue to play on that, and then I can have all my characters. Because with what happened with the Burning Crusade is that all of our Burning Crusade characters went to Wrath of the Lich King, and we didn't have a choice to stay on a Burning Crusade server, and that was completely taken away from everyone. So I'm hoping I'll be able to keep my characters on Wrath of the Lich King, but if what they end up doing is just having kind of like a second set of World of Warcraft, where they go to Cataclysm and then the Warlords of Draenor and then Legion, and they just continue like the expansion cycle, but like an older version of the expansion cycle, I'm definitely not going to be playing that. I have like no interest in that whatsoever, and as soon as Wrath of the Lich King ends and they start moving on to like newer expansions, I'm just done with that whole thing altogether. But another thing they could do is that they could have vanilla, the Burning Crusade, and the Wrath of the Lich King kind of loop back into each other, where people can play vanilla and choose to stay in vanilla or move on to the Burning Crusade, and then people in the Burning Crusade can choose to stay in the Burning Crusade or move on to Wrath, and then Wrath is kind of the end of the cycle, and then people can kind of play whatever era they want. But it's kind of looking like that's not going to be what happens, which is very unfortunate for me, especially because I was really interested in, when I started making this Let's Play series, about having like the full cycle of vanilla, the Burning Crusade, and Wrath of the Lich King, where I want to play through each eras of those games. And one, that might not even be possible anymore, and then two, even if it was, it's not something I'm like super interested in anymore. Where I am wanting to do more like World of Warcraft Let's Plays after the series, but because of a bunch of different things that I'm planning on making a few dedicated videos about outside of my Let's Play series, I'm just like not super interested in that anymore, as we've kind of had this whole development cycle of classic World of Warcraft, and as I've had my own experiences in the game, and as the community has evolved and changed over the years, my kind of like interests and priorities and stuff has changed. But I think ultimately what that comes down to is what's going to happen with World of Warcraft in the future. So I think after this like Mage Let's Play series, for example, I am probably going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to let Wrath of the Lich King unfold, and I'm going to see what happens next. And then from there, I'm going to make my decision and make Let's Plays depending on how I want to. moving forward in the future. Got one elemental fire from there, and I was kind of hoping we got a second one from that other burning exile, but it looks like we're going to have to farm for one more elemental fire. But of course, beyond the whole concerns for the future and what might be happening with that classic World of Warcraft, and then what my intentions are for like the long future, what we have going on right now is we have our level 38 human mage here, and we are trying to get to level 60. So we are going to thoroughly enjoy and play through the Eastern Kingdoms as we explore everything here and potentially die a few times and explore all the quests and kill a bunch of monsters along the way. So this Burning Exile just spawned right next to me, and this is probably not going to be a good situation for me. So I'm going to go ahead and use Evocation here and restore all my mana because I was trying to restore my health there. And then I might have to run away here a little bit, and I got caught there, which is not good. So this might be the end of my life. If I'm able to kite... Oh, okay, so I just died there. We'll go ahead and run back. We are back, and now we can claim our revenge against this fire elemental here. Going back to what I was just talking about for a brief moment, I was just thinking about like two ideas related to Wrath of the King Classic that really kind of set in stone this idea that it was more like rose-tinted goggles for me compared to like Vanilla WoW, which is like an experience that I thoroughly enjoy. The first of which is I was doing achievements and festivals during Wrath of the King Classic, and then I just had like a very hard time continuing on after the first few months of doing them because I've already done this all, and on my like retail WoW account I already have it unlocked, and I just finally got my second elemental fire, which is nice. So let's go ahead and head over here to the circle of inner binding in like the southwestern corner of the Arathi Highlands. But as I was saying, I really enjoy getting achievements in video games, but it just doesn't feel good to get them in the Wrath of the King version because I've already done them, and then they might become irrelevant if we just get upgraded to like the Cataclysm version of the game because a lot of achievements get replaced with like new ones, and then I just wasn't enjoying it as much as I did back in the day. But then the second thing was actually the Argent Tournament Grounds, which is also, some achievements, but it's a daily quest hub, and I thoroughly enjoy it, but I just wasn't enjoying it as much in the classic version of the game as I did back in the day, because I feel like I've already done it all already, and I've already experienced it, and I've already enjoyed it, and stuff like that. So, like, I enjoy playing through it, it just doesn't connect to me in the same way. And I think that's really interesting, because isn't that basically the same thing as Vanilla WoW, the classic era of the game? I'm playing a human mage, a frost mage. I've already done this, but I'm thoroughly enjoying playing through it, and I like really enjoy it. I don't know, it's just like a different thing, but it's also like the same exact thing, but I feel differently to each one, even though they're kind of the same thing. It's just something interesting that I've been thinking about. But here at the Circle of Inner Binding, we now have these Rumbling Exiles, and we can go ahead and start fighting them. And they have a very different moveset compared to the Fire Elementals, where the Fire Elementals dealt a lot of damage to us while we were up close to them, but as long as we were far away, we wouldn't have to worry about them too much because they didn't have any range attacks. And it looks like it's kind of similar here with the Rumbling Exile, but I think they deal a little bit less damage, but they have some stun abilities, including a ranged stun. So we're going to have to be careful as we're dealing frostbolts and stuff like that about getting stunned, because we will not be able to cast out a frostbolt while we're stunned. There's one elemental earth that we need. And there's our second elemental earth. So the earth elementals here went by much faster than the fire elementals. It was like 10 minutes compared to 40. So I appreciate that a lot. But let's go ahead and head over to the Circle of Outer Binding, which I believe has air elementals. Here are some Thundering Exiles, and we have these Burning Charms that we have collected, which is used for the warrior quest that I was talking about earlier. Let's go ahead and use one of them, because I'm not sure what Banish does, and it just instantly kills the Thundering Exile, but we cannot loot it, so that's a little sad, but that's kind of funny. We have this text here that says Thundering Exile is ripped apart as it is banished from this world, so that's kind of fun. It might be nice to just have those on hand just to use in case we die, but I think I kind of want to hold on to them because I'm sure they sell for a little bit on the auction house. And I'm leveling a warrior right now, so it might be nice to just send that over to my warrior. There's one elemental air off of the first air elemental that we killed right there, so that's a good start for us, and hopefully we do not have to kill 50 more in order to get the next one. So these air elementals feel a little bit more powerful than the fire and earth one, because these air elementals actually attack us from range and they deal like 15% of our health with just like a normal strike of their attack there. And that one dealt 18% to me, so we need to be really careful. I don't think we could kill 2 at one time, so we need to just make sure that we are only killing 1 at a time here. And we just got a Thundering Charm here, which will kill a Cresting Exile, which is the water elemental, I believe. So the fire one will kill the air one, and then the air will kill the water, and then I'm assuming the water will kill the fire. And then there's no charm for the earth elementals, funnily enough. So we don't really have to farm them for the warrior quest or to get any of these charms, but we still need them in order to get the elemental earth, as we did. I do think these air elementals have less health than the other two, so we are ripping through them a little bit easier than the other two. There's our second elemental air we need, so that is very nice. And as we head to the last circle, which I think is like right over here, I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of time to just explore the Arathi Highlands for like less than a minute here. So let's go ahead and come over here, and we have another farmstead called Debris Farmstead, and I think this might be, yes it is, this is directly connected to Refuge Point right here. And these farmers here are members of Stormwind, and they are most likely members of Strom, so this is kind of fun. And I'm assuming, and if I recall correctly, that this is a little bit of a questing area for the Horde. I think there's like a quest here where you have to kill like 3 named of the Alliance here, and then there's probably one, I think, to just kill a bunch of like the random like militia right there. But let's go ahead and come over here, and we have a quest that we are not going to pick up. And I see where we need to go for the water elementals. But this is a relatively long quest chain that I'm not too interested in, that just has us learning a little bit more about like the planet Azeroth. But we're going to go ahead and skip that for now. And here we are at the Circle of East Binding, and now we have some Cresting Exiles. And these are water elementals, so I'm just going to go ahead and use my Frostbolt one time just to demonstrate for anyone who's new here. But with our Frostbolt, which is our primary attack, we will not be able to deal any damage to these water elementals, but luckily for us, we had upgraded our fireball, except this water elemental kind of resisted our fireball there, so that's not good. But that one landed, so we're going to have to just kind of use this fireball over and over and over again, and I might actually only kill a few of these water elementals here, and then leave this place. And I might actually only end up killing this one because I am not enjoying this right now, and I might have to use this healing potion here. So let's go ahead and loot that one. And we got some enchanted water, which is nice, even though we have water ourselves. But if we were like a priest or a warlock or anyone else who uses mana, this would be nice to have. And you have a buzzard right there, but fortunately this is a level 31 buzzard, so it shouldn't be too big of an issue for us. So let's go ahead and fight one more of these water elementals, and then I think I'll go ahead and go buy some of the elemental water, which I think is the cheapest out of the 4 actually, and the earth is actually the most expensive, so we got all the other 3, and then I don't feel bad about just buying this one, because I have been here farming these elementals for like almost an hour now, and I'm getting a little over it, except this one died pretty fast, so maybe we'll do a couple more. It looks like these water elementals kind of don't do too much. They're similar to the fire elemental, but I think they're like faster, and then they don't really do too much. I think they attack a little bit faster as well. So they're kind of like the same as the fire elementals, except of course they are immune to water compared to the fire elementals who are immune to fire. So we just got 1 elemental water there, so maybe my spirits are a little bit higher now. We'll stick around just a little bit and try to get a second one. We do have this flash bundle right here that I might go ahead and just use up just so we can get it out of our bags, and it deals some fire damage, which is nice. Our wand also deals shadow damage, so it's been good against all the elementals that we have fought here. And there is the last elemental water that we needed. So we have spent the last hour and a little bit just farming all the elementals here in the Arathi Highlands. And we now have 2 elemental earth, water, fire, and air. If we come into our tailoring panel here, that is basically everything that we need in order to craft this robe of power. You just have to buy some silken thread from a tailor and iron forge, and we already have some bolts of mage weave. So let's go ahead and poke our head over here really quickly, because we have the town of Hammerfall, and Hammerfall, I believe, is basically just another town that kind of existed here, but it is now controlled by the Horde, and this is basically where the Horde enter the Arathi Basin battleground, similar to where the Alliance enter at Refuge Point. And this is a little bit of a bigger establishment here, and we actually see a Horde player right over there kind of hanging out. But we have all these Hammerfall Guardians and stuff like that we are just going to completely ignore, and if we come through here on a Horde character, we can go ahead and experience that. But I think for the most part, that is pretty much everything in this land. I guess we can go ahead and come up here really quickly, because we have, I think it's like Dry Whisker Caverns or something like that, but we have all these kobolds here that reside in a series of caves over here, which is actually where we get, I believe it's called Bloodstone Ore, which if you remember when we were in Stranglethorn Vale a few episodes back, we actually just bought some. It's Dry Whisker Gorge, but we bought some on the trading post, or the auction house rather, in Booty Bay, and we just turned in that quest. But let's go ahead and head to Ironforge so we can craft these robes. So coming into the tailor, let's go ahead and buy 2 silken thread, and then we can make this robe of power, which is going to take us a very long time to craft. This bar is going up very slowly. And now we have a new set of robes that we can go ahead and equip, and it is significantly better than what we currently have. So let's go ahead and right click that, and now we are red and white instead of the purple that we had. Which I think I like the purple a little bit more, but the red and white does look really cool, and it's kind of like a nice little change as well. But now that we are done with that adventure, let's go ahead and start a new one, where I am wanting to head to the zone known as the Badlands, which is just south of Loch Modan, and we can go ahead and begin exploring everything to do in that area. And we have a quest here that I want to pick up in Ironforge that is going to lead us over towards that area. So let's go ahead and chat with Prospector Stormpike here, and we can go ahead and pick up the Iron Band Wansu quest, which is going to take us over towards the Badlands. So the closest place that we have here in the Badlands, and where our quest is actually taking us to, is over in Loch Modan. So let's go ahead and take a griffin to Thelsomar. In the beautiful village of Thelsomar, we actually have a quest that we can pick up called the Badlands Reagent Run, which is going to be a relatively big quest that we can work on while we are exploring the Badlands. So Gakyo Touch here wants us to get 5 Buzzard Gizzards, 10 Crag Coyote Fangs, 5 Rock Elemental Shards. But alongside that, let's go ahead and head to the Iron Band's excavation site, and we can go ahead and pick up some more quests. Here we are at the excavation site, and we can go ahead and talk to Prospector Iron Band here. We can turn in this quest, and then we have another quest that we can pick up here to basically go talk to someone at Thelsomar, and then we have a quest to go find someone in the Badlands, and we actually get some gold ore and some jade from this, which is nice. So let's go ahead and actually the quest that I picked up, Excavation Progress Report, is actually not a quest that we need to do, but I might go ahead and just turn it in anyways. But now let's enter the Badlands, and this was basically a little bit over an hour questing that I did here that I'm just kind of cutting down into 10 minutes here. Badlands for me is a really interesting zone because it's not that interesting for me, especially on Alliance. For whatever reason, I think the Horde experience here is a little bit better than the Alliance experience, but they're mostly kind of the same. But the Horde have a very established outpost here known as Kargath, whereas the Alliance have their closest outpost as Thelsomar, which is a concept that I really like, that in order to do some exploration in the zone, you basically kind of have to camp out at Thelsomar. And of course there's quest givers in Badlands, as we have a few different camps here and there, but for the most part Thelsomar is like the biggest place. But the quests here aren't super interesting for me. They're kind of like whatever. I enjoy doing them, but they're not like my favorite thing, and I don't really have too much to say about them. But I do want to say that a new thing that has kind of arisen in like the modern version of World of Warcraft Classic that we saw all the way back to when Classic originally released, and we've seen on like private servers and stuff before Classic came out, is the idea of AoE farming with mages, which is something that I've shown like once in this Let's Play series, and I've talked about it a little bit, but it was really prevalent here in the Badlands for whatever reason, as there were a ton of mages around here that were AoE farming, but it made my life of questing a little bit harder because I couldn't get a lot of tags on some of these mobs, so I was kind of just like running around waiting for some tags to respawn, because all these mages were basically just like aggroing all of these mobs as fast as they could, grouping them up and AoEing them down, and basically leaving nothing for anybody else. So it took me a little bit of extra time in order to progress through this area and complete all these quests, but overall it was okay in the end, and I completed a bunch of quests and got a ton of experience and some gold from it. But one thing that I want to talk about here is kind of a story that we see going on with World of Warcraft that we haven't really talked about too much, and that's kind of like the more mythos of Azeroth and like the Warcraft universe and stuff, where we've talked a lot about like military and conflicts and war and stuff like that, as well as like political stories, as well as like human nature stories of like murder and other things like that, looking back at like Legend of Stalin, for example, for something like that. But the World of Warcraft universe is a very, very expansive, and there is a ton of stuff going on, and we can look at the planet as a whole, where we can kind of learn more about what exactly the planet is and basically why the planet exists, and maybe like what's inside the planet. And we see stories about like the old gods and the makers and stuff, which is basically the first time I've ever talked about this here, and I might talk about it more at some point in the future, but this is something we're kind of seeing here with a lot of like dwarven storylines going on, where the dwarves recently went from being a people that focused a lot on mining and like gathering resources and stuff like that, and transitioned to being a people that cared a lot about archaeology. And that is something that we see where a bunch of new organizations popped up, such as the Explorers League, and they're basically doing a lot of like archaeology around the world to try to figure out where the dwarves come from. And we see throughout the expansions, and especially in the second expansion, Wrath Lich King, which is currently, at the time of making this video, the current expansion of World of Warcraft, where we kind of learn where humans come from, where dwarves come from, and where gnomes come from, as well as like other stuff as well. And then we see in like the World of Warcraft universe where there's this like ever increasing tier list of like enemies, power, and stuff like that, where we have like, you know, let's go for like a very, very like extensive example here, where we start off with like an ant, and then like a bunny rabbit, and then like a wolf, and then like a human. And then when we go higher than that, we start seeing some forces, maybe like the Lich King, for example, which is definitely a very powerful force that it controls like undead and is trying to kill like the humans. And then above the Lich King, we kind of have forces like the old gods, which are kind of like just big Cthulhu-esque creatures that are basically just like trying to like control everything. This is like a very brief, quick explanation, like the mythos of World of Warcraft. But then above the old gods, we have like the Titans, which are basically kind of like on the same power level as the old gods, but I guess technically the Titans are a little bit higher, and specifically Sargeras, who is like the fallen Titan, who basically kind of like killed all the other Titans and then captured their spirits and is basically kind of holding them prisoner. And Sargeras is in control of the Burning Legion, who basically is going all over the universe to try to kill basically a bunch of planets and like life and stuff on that. And then we see the Burning Legion with certain individuals, and the Burning Legion corrupted like Ner'zhul, who then eventually became the Lich King. So it kind of all goes back up to like Sargeras, who is like kind of like the big bad of the World of Warcraft universe, of the Warcraft universe in general. And we see with the Legion expansion that storyline kind of ends, but of course they have to go bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we see that with like the Jailer, who is the main boss of the Shadowlands expansion, who basically for the most part nobody likes, and nobody likes the storyline at all. And some people kind of like just want to completely ignore that it ever happened, but like the Jailer is supposed to be like even more powerful than Sargeras. But we have other lore that relates to a bigger force than Sargeras, known as the Void, and I think this is like technically like the biggest bad that we currently have in like the Warcraft universe, where the Void are basically trying to get into like this realm of dimension, or like Void Lords specifically, and basically Sargeras killed all the other Titans and is trying to like destroy all life in the universe in order to prevent the Void from being able to corrupt things and come into this universe. And I think the old gods are kind of like from the Void in some way, I'm not exactly sure. But then above the void, we don't really have anything else. But as we see World of Warcraft evolve in the future, we might have more and more and more like big bads that happen as like they try to raise the stakes, because that kind of seems to be what like the general trend is, where they want to like raise the stakes a lot instead of having more like grounded experiences, which I guess kind of goes back towards like what gaming communities and culture wants, where like some people want like very very high stakes, and then some people want like more grounded things. And that's something we see with like World of Warcraft Classic versus like retail, where a lot of people like Classic because I mean it's a fantasy universe, but it feels like much more grounded, where like your character that you're playing as is kind of a random person that's basically just going around the road and is like helping people out, and then eventually is able to like learn enough things and become like powerful enough and get like good enough equipment to be able to work together with a bunch of other people in order to like organize themselves together and defeat some more powerful forces like Kel'Thuzad. But then we see with like World of Warcraft evolving in the future, those stakes get higher and higher and higher. Some people like that, some people don't. I like both things. I like high stakes and I like grounded things, and I think it's good to have like a mixture of the both. But going all the way back around here, we see kind of a lot of stories here with like Odamon, which is a dungeon that we probably won't be exploring, but we kind of just learn a bit more about like the mythos of the Warcraft universe. And I'll throw a few links down in the description below, because I'm not going to talk too much about it, and I might at some point in the future, but for right now I'm not going to talk too much about like the universe as a whole and like all of the like the old gods and stuff like that. But if you're interested in that, go ahead and feel free to check it out in the description. But beyond all that, I've been completing a ton of quests, and I got to level 39, and we are just one level away from getting our mount. But I went ahead and went back to Thosamar, and right after this I actually went to Ironforge to turn in one more quest and sell some things. But beyond that, I'm going to go ahead and call this episode good here, and I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I very much enjoyed playing through it and making all of this and talking about all of this, and I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Remember to drink some water, check your posture, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time in the World of Warcraft. Goodbye.